Hi, thanks for joining us for the final episode of Sefer Ezra, or Ezra-Nechemia, in which we discuss the reasons for the recurring pitfall of intermarriage, as well as try to bring out the overarching theme of the book and its role within Tanach more broadly. Enjoy.
Okay, so when last we left our fearless heroes at the end of chapter 12, we had just come to the crescendo of the book with
Are you recording?
Yes, we are recording. With the dedication of the walls of Yerushalayim. So now the problem that we had started the book with the walls being in disrepair and people not feeling safe and then not being able to embrace their Yiddishkeit because they were too busy in Maslow's hierarchy, that has been solved. So now they have rebuilt walls, they have safety. You have the physical combining of Ezra and Nehemiah, right? We had two processions. One side was Ezra, the other side is Nehemiah, and then they meet in the middle, and all's well that ends well. Except that there's another parak, and this other parak is very interesting, and we're going to dive right in, and then we will hopefully talk a little bit about what the whole book is about. And try to take away a lesson from everything that Ezra and Nehemiah has to teach us. So, without any further adu, Bayom Hahu, on that day, Nikra b'Sefer Moshe ba'aznei ha'am, the Sefer of Moshe, the Torah was read in the ears of the people. V'nimtza katuv bo, and we found, thing of all things, looky here, it says in this Sefer Torah, Asher lo yavo amanu ma'avi b'kahal Elohim ad olam. No Ammonites and Moabites are allowed into the nation of the Jewish people forever and ever and ever and ever. And we will see later on the way this pasuk is used. It seems to imply no Ammoni Moavi men or women. Yes. Ki lo and well, actually, I guess we'll get to later. Ki lo, why? Why can we not allow the Ammoni and Moavi people into the Kahal Hashem? Ki lo kidmu etz b'nei Yisrael b'lechem u'b'mayim, because they did not greet the Jewish people when they were coming into Eretz Yisrael with bread and water. That's problem number one. And problem number two, vayiskor alav et Bilam lekalalo, they rented out Bilam to curse the Jewish people. Ve'afoch Eloheinu haklala levracha, and God turned over his curse into a bracha. Fine. Vayihi kisham am et haTorah, and it was when the people heard this Torah. Vayavdilu kol erev miYisrael, and they then separated out all the mixed in people from the Jewish people. Now, this has happened several times already in this book, right? What we have just read is kind of like you watch, not you, certain people who will remain nameless might watch TV shows. And sometimes, like in the first 2 or 3 minutes, you'll get a scene that actually takes place later in the show. And it's kind of like, not foreshadowed, but like there's a preamble, right? And you're getting a scene that actually happens later at the very beginning. And then you cut to the actual beginning chronologically and the show plays out. That's what...
It has a name.
Yeah, it has a name.
In medias res.
Oh, yeah. No, in media res is when
you're starting. You're starting
right.
with all the action happening, and then you
flash
back. Like, how did we get here?
3 weeks earlier.
Okay, so that's essentially what we're about to do, right? Unbelievable. Okay, the cookies. We're talking about the cookies being unbelievable. Okay, that's for posterity, not posteriority.
Oh, snap.
And the reason I'm calling this out in not just in terms of how the book is written to show that that is done intentionally as like a literary device, but because without that the whole thing reads very poorly. And before all this that you just read in the past 3 psukim, something else happened, which was El Yoshiv HaKohen Nasun B'Lishkas Beis Eloheinu Karov Latovia. There, welcome. Remember that that guy,
Tovia and Sanballat.
right? Tovia and Sanballat were the bad guys, right? And one of them is an Ammoni. So we had mentioned before that they were kind of intermarried or intermixed with the Kohanim, but it was even worse than that. That Eliashib, the Kohen Gadol, he was kind of renting out space to his cousin or in-law or whatever, however they're related, but he's renting out space in the Beis Hamikdash, Belishkas Beis Eloheinu Karov LaTovia, to his relative Tovia. Vayaslo lishka gedola v'sham hayu lifanim nosnim mesamincha levona v'hakelim u'meiser hadagan hatirosh v'yitzar. So once upon a time, this storage room in the Beis Hamikdash was used for korbanos. That's where we kept like all the stuff that was going to get offered. But since the Beis Hamikdash has fallen into disuse, it has now been moved into like Manhattan storage for our enemies.
It's like one of those. I forgot what they're called.
Mini storage?
Yeah, like one of those.
Yeah, Manhattan Mini Storage is one of those companies that like stores your stuff. Mitzvahs halavim v'hamashorim v'hashorim utrumas hakohanim, all the stuff that was set aside, the dues for the Levium, the singing Levium, the gatekeeping Levium, and the gifts for the Kohanim, that's where they used to keep it. But because there are no Levium and Kohanim, which we're about to find out, therefore... Right, it has become, the Beis Hamikdash has become a warehouse for the enemies of the Jewish people. And now, that's why we're kind of getting now the beginning chronologically of what happened. What we just found out about the Beis Hamikdash being used as a storehouse takes place before they read the psukim that, oh, by the way, Ammoni and Moabi are no good and don't have them around. That takes place chronologically later, even though it's earlier in the psukim. And now we cut to first-person narrative, and we're back in the memoirs of Nechemia. Ubechol zeh lo hayiti b'Yushalayim, and I, meaning Nechemia, was not there in Yerushalayim when all of this happened. In other words, sometime after the reunion, the unification of Ezra and Nechemia in the last parak, Nechemia was like, okay, job done, right? If you recall way back in the beginning of Sefer Nechemia,
how long are you going for?
Right, the king asked him, okay, I got it. You gotta go and take care of your people. That's fine, but there's a limited time offer, right? You're not just there indefinitely. He had actually gone for 12 years. After he felt, okay, I did my job. I built the walls. I rededicated. I'm good. So he went back to being the wine steward of the king. So Nehemiah says, when all this happened, that the Beis Hamikdash once again fell into disuse, I was not in Yerushalayim, ki b'shnat shloshim u'shtayim la'ar tachshasta melech Bavel ba'ati el hamelech. So remember, he left in the 20th year, and he came back in the 32nd year. Uleketz yamim, and then after a certain amount of time, nishalti min hamelech v'avu liyerushalayim v'avina bara asher asa el yashiv l'tovi la'asos lo nishka b'chatzrei beis ha'elohim. So he came back. This is like the post-credit scene. 1 year later, he shows up again, only to find that all of his efforts have now fallen apart. That his enemy is now using the Beis Hamikdash that he rededicated as his kind of like extra storage overflow for all of his too many books. V'yirali me'od, very bad. V'ashlicha et kol klei beis tovia hachutz min halishka. So what does he do? What any good upset girlfriend does when he just tossed it out. He took all his stuff and he threw it out, right? and he keyed his donkey while he was at it. The Omra v'yitaru halishachos v'yashiva sham klei beis Elohim es hamincha v'halavona, and he starts giving orders, right? This is very Nehemia-oriented approach as opposed to an Ezra-oriented approach. Purify the rooms and put everything back to the way it was. Bring me back the frankincense and the lavona and the mincha offering, right? Put it all back. Ve'eda ki manayos halavim, and then I found out how bad things really were. Manayos halavim lo nitna, no one was bringing the gifts, the matanos levim, v'yivrachu ish lisadehu, and so the levim went and started becoming landowners, which is exactly what the Torah says not to be, right? They weren't given a chelek because they're not supposed to be landowners, supposed to be running the Beis Hamikdash, but they all went and bought fields, halavim, v'hamashorim, oseh hamalacha. All the people who were supposed to be doing the malacha were out doing the malacha in the fields instead. V'ariva es haskanim v'omra, and so he rebukes the skan kohanim. He says, "Madua ne'azav beis Elohim ve'akbetzeim v'amidem al amdam," and so he calls them to task and he assigns everybody to come back and start doing the work again, right? V'chol Yehuda heviu maser hadagan v'atirosh v'itzar la'otzros, and everyone starts bringing everything back and bringing the gifts and the wine and the oil and everything starts repopulating the treasuries. V'otzra al otzaros. Shlemya hakohen v'tzadok hasofer opadaya min halavim ve'al yadam Chanan ben Zachor ben Matanya ki ne'emanim nechshavu v'alehem lachlok la'achehem. So he starts appointing his own trusted people, right? He has his own little cabinet of people. He knows, okay, I know these guys. I'm going to put them in charge of the various lishkos, and they can delegate as they see fit, but he's trying to reestablish a system that we will continue to see only is as good as the amount of energy Nehemiah puts into it. And when you extract Nehemiah from it, the whole thing falls down again. And he sees this. The next pasuk is Zachar li Elohai. Remember me, God, Alzos, because of this. V'al tamach chazdai. Don't wipe away my chesed asher asisi b'beis Elohai u'b'mishmarav that I did for the Beis Hamikdash and for all the people who are attending to the Beis Hamikdash. Bayomim ha'hema. In those days, Nehemiah saw more. Ra'iti bihuda dorchim gisos b'Shabbat. He sees that they are violating Shabbat because they are doing what? Yes.
That sounds ominous.
A gat is a? Yes. What are they stomping on?
Grapes or all
Yeah.
grapes.
Yeah.
The gas is grape.
Right. So they're involved in dush. They're threshing. They're threshing the grape. They're stomping on the grapes. Who is Nehemiah? He's the wine steward.
Right.
The thing they're doing to be Mechal Shabbos is not. It's not like they're I don't know. They're being Masartate. They're not baking on Shabbos. They're making wine on Shabbos. He's the wine guy, and that's what they're doing to be Mechal Shabbos. Umevim ha'aremos v'omsim ala chamorim v'af yayin anovim ute'enim v'chol masa umevim Yerushalayim b'yom haShabbat va'id b'yom michram tzayid. So they're bringing all these other. They're hauling on the donkey a bunch of grains. And they're bringing the wines and the grapes and the figs and all kinds of stuff, and they're making Shabbos the market day in Yerushalayim. And people are not even fazed by this. It's not like people were going out of their way and saying, you know what, we're rebelling against Hashem and we're going to make Shabbos the market day. They're totally oblivious to the fact that there's anything even wrong with this. V'hatzorim yashvu ba, and okay, we'll get into why that is. V'hatzorim yashvu ba meviim dag v'chol mecher u'mochrim b'Shabbat livnei Yehuda u'Yerushalayim. And the people from Tzur, they're the ones that are out on the ocean. They've got the boats, so they're the fishermen. They come and they sell fish in the marketplace in Yerushalayim, along with other stuff from Tzur to the Jews in Yerushalayim. V'ariva es chorei Yehuda v'omra lahem. So he rebukes the people of Yehuda and he says to them, "Ma davar hara hazeh asher atam osim u'mechalim et yom haShabbat." Guys, what are you doing? You're being mechal Shabbos. Like, come on. Halo ko asu avoseichem v'yaveh Eloheinu aleinu es kol hara hazos. Right? This is classic Nehemiah that we saw earlier in the book. This was you guys are not the first ones to think about doing something wrong and it doesn't work out. Your forefathers also sinned, and God brought all the bad. Remember, we were just in Bavel, and He brought it on this city in specific. And you're bringing even more chil on the Jewish people, this chil of Shabbat. Asher lo yivpatchum ad achar Shabbat uminarei amadati al sha'arim lo yavo masa b'yom haShabbat. So he closes up shop, right? He's in charge of the walls, so he appoints his guys to lock up the gates, so there cannot be a market day if you can't bring your wares into the city. So he locks down. Yerushalayim is on like quarantine for Shabbat, so that there will not be any commerce on Shabbat. So what do? So the Goyim don't understand what this is. They think, okay, there's a temporary shutdown, so we'll just park outside, right? V'ya'ida bahem. And again, listen to the symbolism here. So Nehemiah starts to va'ida, like to testify, but he means like he's calling them to task. V'amar alehem madua atem lenim neged hachoma. Where did they park? They parked in the shade of the wall that he made.
Right.
That's his crowning achievement, was to make the wall, right?
Right.
And the Goyim are using the wall as their parking lot so that they can get in for Shabbos. That's where they park the vehicles, like against his wall. Im tishnu yadashlach bachem min ha'is hahi lo ba'u b'Shabbat. If you do this again, I'm coming at you with my hand, meaning there's going to be violence This is Shabbos. Like, that's it. Genug. V'amar lo levim asher yiyu mitaharim uvoim shomrim hash'arim lekadeshes yom ha'shabbat gam zos zachra li Elohai v'chusa alai karov chazdecha. So he ordered the Levium to come and purify everybody, purify and guard the gates to make sure that that Shabbos is properly observed. Please Hashem, remember me for this. V'chusa alai karov chazdecha.
He says this Zachor Alai in the middle of the book too.
Yes. Every time he tries to do something and he sees that it doesn't have permanence, that he's able to fix it, but it's not a permanent fix, that's where you get this Zachor Alai, I tried.
Right.
Is part of the problem there were not teachers at this point?
I love what you just said, and I want to get back to that.
What?
I think part of the problem is there weren't enough teachers.
So let's dig into this a little bit. Who were the teachers?
Well, I don't know if they were qualified. The Kohen Levium.
Kohen and Levium historically are the teachers.
Were the Kohen Levium at that time qualified? Where they learned it enough themselves? And then I don't know the numbers of people. That's the bigger part. I don't.
Irrespective of the numbers of the people, it certainly goes to what you're saying, that no one is teaching. Even if there's not enough teachers to teach, but it doesn't seem like anyone's teaching. We said earlier the Kohen and Levium weren't getting their gifts, so they went out to the fields. They abandoned the Beis Hamikdash.
Well, it takes time. We have said that at one time, okay, this is how you keep Shabbos, but there's a lot of laws. And how long does it take?
Sure, but look at what Nechemia did, right? He didn't sit down and say we have to educate the people. He said we have to stop the problem, and if necessary by force. I'm going to lock the city down. Then once I lock the city down, we can figure out how to educate people and explain to them like what you're doing is wrong. I mean, he told them what you're doing is wrong, but he didn't leave it just at that. Like here's a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, figure out what you're doing.
They're winnowing because they don't know that that's no good.
Here, read this.
Okay, so we kind of went from the inside out. So the Beis Hamikdash was problem number one. The gate, the wall, the gates, and Shabbat is problem number two. And now we come to problem number three. Gam bayamim hahem ra'iti et hayudim hoshvim nashim ashdodios amonios moavios. And guess what? The old problem is back, right? The problem of intermarriage. The Jews were marrying women from Ashdod. Ostensibly, Ashdod women were not Jewish, along with Ammoni women and Moavi women. And we mentioned this earlier, there is no more Ammon and Moab. Now, you could say for Sanballat and his ilk that maybe one person here or there was able to trace themselves back. But once Sancheriv came and mixed up all the nations, halachically, there is no nation of Ammon and Moab anymore. So this is a proxy for non-Jewish women in general. So when we read the pasuk that says, Lo yavo Ammoni Moavi b'kal Hashem, the people in the times of Nechemia are reading that, or Nechemia is at least reading that as all non-Jews, male and female, no good. So if the Jews are marrying these women, it's like they were marrying Ammoni Moavi women who you're not supposed to marry. Now we can deal with Rus separately. Ubneihem chatzi medaber, and listen to his problem. Ubneihem chatzi medaber ashdodit ve'enam makirim ledaber Yehudit u'kelishon am va'am. They spoke some foreign tongue. They spoke Ashdodit, whatever they spoke, they didn't even understand Hebrew. And that does not sit well with Nechemia either. You'll recall in Megillas Esther that everyone has to speak full am v'am kilashon, right? They have to speak the lashon of the man of the house. V'arivimam ve'kalalem. And he gathered them together and cursed them. V'akem mehem anashim v'emretem v'ashbi'em be'elohim im titnu b'nosechem livnehem v'im tis'u mibnosechem livnechem v'lachem. He flogged them, tore out their hair. Do you remember what we said about the difference between Nechemia and Ezra?
He's tearing out his own hair.
Right. When Ezra sees a problem, he tears out his own hair. When Nechemia sees a problem, he tears out the other people's hair. And he made them swear, saying, don't give your daughters in marriage to their sons, and don't take any of their daughters for your sons either. Yes.
This is after the whole document signing thing?
Yes.
And everyone
pledging they
allegiance?
pledge allegiance to not do exactly what they went back and did again.
Yeah, okay. Checking.
Reminds me of what Ron DeSantis said this week. He says if your neighbor lost his job, it's a recession. If you lost your job, it's a depression. If Dr. Fauci loses his job, it's a recovery. You had one job.
Hello, al Eile Chata'a Shlomo Melech Yisrael. So Nehemiah is going to give them some real musar over here. You guys aren't the first ones to think of marrying non-Jewish women. Shlomo married non-Jewish women. It didn't work out too well for him either. He sinned. Ubagoyim harabim lo haya melech kamo. And there was never a king as great as Shlomo. Va'ahuv lo lohav haya. And he was beloved to God. His name is Yedidya v'itnehu Elohim melech al kol Yisrael. And God placed him as king over all the Jewish people. So he was like, super mega awesome guy. Gam oto hechtiu anashim nachrios, and the non-Jewish women messed him up. So what do you think they're going to do to you? V'lachem anishma la'asos kol hara gedola hazos lim'ol belohenu la'ashiv nashim nachrios, and obviously it's going to cause you to lose your connection to Hashem when you're involved with these nashim nachrios. Ubnei Yoyada ben Eliashiv HaKohen HaGadol chatan l'san balat ha'charoni v'avrichehu me'alai, and one of the sons of Eliashiv, his name was, so Eliashiv is the Kohen Gadol, right? One of his sons, his name is Yoyada. He was the son-in-law of Sanballat, the major enemy of Nehemiah. So he drove him, this guy Yoyada away. Zachar lehem Elohai, alga aleh hakahuna ubris hakahuna v'halavim. Remember to their demerit, Hashem. All those people who tried to pollute the priesthood and remove the bris of kahuna and levim. V'tihartim mikol nechar, and I purified the Jews from all these foreign elements. Va'amida mishmarot lekohanim v'levim ish b'mlachto, and I appointed everybody to take their proper shifts as kohanim and levim. Ulekurban ha'itzim be'itim zumanos. Bikurim, and he made sure that the korban eitzim is properly taken care of at its proper time, and people are bringing the bikurim. And then he ends with Zachra li Elohai latova. Remember me for good, Hashem, for all of these efforts that he tried obviously to do. And as we know historically, the second Beis Hamikdash was not a great time for the Jewish people from this time forward. There were a revolving door of Kohanim Gedolim compared to the first Beis Hamikdash, where there was like 4 Kohanim Gedolim in the entire duration of maybe it was 8, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's that?
That sounds a little, it was 400 of them a year.
Right.
It could have been 4. That's probably
A small amount. I can't remember the exact number, but it's the number compares to, in the second Beis Hamikdash, it was like more than 1 per year.
Yeah.
Every year on Yom Kippur they had
right.
Yeah.
So what you see from there, and this goes back to what you were saying, is that the Kohanim Levim are not doing their thing, right? The job of the Kohanim Levim, besides working the Beis Hamikdash, is to educate the people, and they're not educating the people.
But were they educated themselves?
Were they educated themselves? Historically, that's how it works.
But did they lose it?
Well, we had a whole ceremony where not only was Ezra teaching Torah, the Kohanim Levim were teaching everybody Torah. And
so there were enough of them.
There were enough. It's available for them to be able to do. So one thing I want to address is this whole intermarriage thing, and I will give you a proposal which I have not seen mentioned anywhere, but there is a famous Gemara that talks about why was there no Avodah Zarah in the second Beis Hamikdash. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed for Sinas Chinam, right? The Gemara talks about that in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, maybe at the beginning of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah was Zechariah. They got together and they said, look, the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah is too much for us. We've lost the first Beis Hamikdash because of that. We can't deal with this anymore. A petek falls down from Shemaim that says MS, and so they fast for 3 days. A note. They get like a note from heaven. And
the lion goes out of the Kodesh.
Right, so there's a fiery lion that appears out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the Navi Zechariah says that's the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, and they go to catch it, and they pluck out one of its hairs, and it lets out a roar that goes for like 400 parsos, and they're freaking out. So the Navi says, put it in a lead pipe, and this is actually like cryptically alluded to in the 5th parak of Zechariah. They put the lion in a lead pipe because lead, the sound is contained in lead. And once they get rid of this Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, so that's why you never hear about Avodah Zarah in the second Beis Hamikdash, right? And consequently, there's always a balance of these things. So if you have no Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, there's no prophecy, right? That's how you get to the end of prophecy. So then they wanted to get rid of the Yetzer Hara for Gilui Arayos, and they found out that you can't do that because if you get rid of the Yetzer Hara for Gilui Arayos, then there's no procreation, no fresh eggs, no procreation. I think what you're seeing in this parak and really throughout the book is Gilui Arayos is now the new substitute for Avodah Zarah. So if you read, let's say, Sefer Shoftim, you get the same repetitive pattern that the Jews worshipped Avodah Zarah and they forgot about Hashem, and so the enemy comes and they oppresses them, blah blah blah. Right here, the repetitive pattern is the same, except it's with non-Jewish women. Right throughout the book, you have the Jews saying, you have either Ezra or Nehemiah like, hey, stop marrying non-Jewish women. Oh, yes, you're totally right. We should stop marrying. We promise we're going to stop marrying. We'll sign contracts that we're not marrying non-Jewish women. And then Nehemiah comes back a year later, right? This is not like a long time. It's not like Nehemiah comes back 50 years later and he's an old man and people are like, oh, we totally forgot about that promise that we made. 12 months later, he comes back like, guys, get it together for 12 months. No, but it's because that taiva exists at a degree that we're not even familiar with. Like the Yetzer Hara of one thing is gone.
Our generation maybe a little bit.
They thought she was Jewish.
Maybe the last generation not so much, but our generation I think we kind of have a little bit of a struggle with.
Why
So-
wouldn't how were they able to get rid of dessert? Wouldn't that take
Well, it
away
helps when
the
they're killing
dry
us.
part? But
Huh?
in general,
Yeah, that's why there's no prophecy. There was a decrease in the passionate seeking out of Hashem to the point where a person can become a navi. That's a very good question. So that's one thing I would mention. The other is like the book ends on a downer, right? It ends on Nehemiah trying to fix everything that he's already fixed and seeing that it's unfixable. I would submit to you, and when we did the intro to this book, we talked about a pattern that exists in the book and historically, where you have, and I think we compared it to Yetzias Mitzrayim, where you have the non-Jewish king who the Jews leave from the non-Jewish land to go back to Eretz Yisrael. They get the stuff they need in order to build their Mishkan Mikdash from the non-Jewish king, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. They travel through the Midbar. They have to deal with internal, the Erev Rav or the internal people who are in the land. There's a lot of that repetition, and then it's successful only to be not successful, right? You have Matan Torah, and then you have the Egal Azav right afterwards. You have Ezra showing up, and everything is great until it's not so great. And that pattern flows through this book repeatedly. Where does that leave us? So what I will submit to you is that the crux of the book, and therefore the point of the book in Tanach in general, is really the beginning of this 13th parak, where he says that they read from the Sefer Torah. That in Pasuk Aleph says, "Bayomahu nikra b'Sefer Moshe ba'aznei ha'am," that they started reading from the Torah and they found out X, Y, Z. This is not the Kohanim read from the Sefer Torah and told people X, Y, Z. This is the Hamon Am. The people are starting to realize that they can learn Torah on their own. The Kohanim and Levim are not cutting it. They need to be able to access the Torah directly. And that's part of what the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah established, to read the Sefer Torah on multiple days, even though Moshe had done that originally, but they brought it back. The idea, I think, of what Sefer Ezra and Nehemiah is about is that just like in the Midbar or in the first Beis HaMikdash, things are going to fall apart, but you're given as a people the key for continuity. And the key for continuity in the Midbar is Matan Torah, right? You can have the Egel, you can have, right, the Gemara says that Hashem says, Halavai, that they would keep my Torah, they would abandon me to keep my Torah, it would bring them back, right? Here, what is happening is the old paradigm is falling apart. The old paradigm was, you have a Navi, you have Kohanim, they're going to tell you how to serve God. If you're not sure, you can always ask the Navi, you can always ask the Kohen, and they'll put you back on the right path. That doesn't exist anymore. There is no prophecy, there is no Navi, there is no Kohen. The Kohanim are out being an Am Haaretz, working the fields. It's up to the people, but what they're given is access. When Ezra shows up and he teaches everybody the Torah, now everybody has access to the Torah. And that has carried them for the 2,000 years subsequent to this, right? The second Beis HaMikdash falls apart. The whole system is not sustainable. What is sustainable, and what Nehemiah doesn't even himself realize, is that the seeds are already there. The people have access to the information directly, and that has been what's kept them. The yeshiva, the fact that people can go and learn Torah on their own, that is a new paradigm that never existed before. It was always everyone is a field worker and they're all Amei Aretz, and whenever they need to know the law, they'll go to the judge, the shofet, the whomever. There's now a new paradigm. Nehemiah keeps trying to prop up the old paradigm. Let's bring the Kohanim back and we'll set them up where they're supposed to be. And, okay, now stay right there. I'll be back in 12 months. And he comes back and everything is screwed up, right? That's because that's not a paradigm anymore. That doesn't work. And it will continue every time you stop putting effort into it. Like as soon as you pull out the battery, it falls apart because it's not the way that the Jewish people are going to operate. Hashem has already allowed the seeds for that to germinate, and we see that unfold post Tanach. But what that tells you is that the purpose of the whole book is really what the purpose of all of Tanach is, which is Tanach itself is there to give you the continuity of the Jewish people, right? The point of Ezra and Nehemiah is to show you that paradigms come and go. You might think that the most important thing to serve Hashem is to live like we lived in the shtetl in Europe. There's lots of paradigms that people fall in love with and they hold on to very, very hard. But if that paradigm falls apart for whatever reason, there's already going to be the seeds there of what is next. Because what's really important is the continuity. What Ezra and Nehemiah, the book, comes to tell you even more so than the people, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was always going to ensure that continuity is there. The seeds for it might not be something that people can even see at the time, but they're already planted and they germinate over time. Okay, Kasher.